today's online Zoom coaching session to just for people to come in and ask questions and learn something new. So what we're going to be talking about today is fasting and really just a beginner's guide to fasting. So if you've never joined us on one of our Monday fasts, which we tend to do as a group once a week, this might be a good place to start if you're unsure of how to do it, or if you are ready for fasting. Just hoping to give you a little bit more insight into what fasting is and how it can help you to achieve your goals when it comes to your metabolic health. So this is just a real beginner level introduction to fasting, and the goal is on education and safety, and there's no pressure to do it, and you do what feels right for your body. So I want to be very clear up front that fasting is not mandatory. We don't have to do it. It's also not starvation. So just be careful if you tell someone that you're fasting, they might assume that that means you're starving yourself and then give you all the bad connotations to that. But that is not at all what fasting is. And fasting is not a weight loss punishment. It's not something we do to punish ourselves. So it's simply a tool, one of many different tools that we can use to support metabolic health when used appropriately and intentionally. So by the end of this session, you should have a good understanding of what fasting is and what it isn't. You would be able to know the different types of intermittent fasting, know how to start gently and safely, know who should not fast or when you should be more cautious with fasting, and feel confident about whether this is something that you would like to try or not try. So let's start up by cleaning up some common misconceptions. Fasting is a planned period of not eating food. And I always tell people it's in the space of there is food available, but we've made a choice not to eat it. So that is a very big distinction between fasting and starvation. Starvation is there is no food available. We don't have a choice. We're fasting because we don't have access to food. So with with starvation. In fasting, we have food, but we've chosen not to eat for a period of time. It is a great tool to help us to get our insulin level time to fall. So we know now that every time we eat, whether it's protein, fat, or carbohydrates, that there's a response in our insulin level. And one of the reasons why we do the low carb and high fat food and meals is because it has less of an impact on our insulin level, but there is still an impact. So every time we eat, we get a rise in insulin. And sometimes for some people that are very insulin resistant, even chewing gum that has a flavor, it's telling your brain that something sweet is coming, be prepared, and it sends out that insulin. For some people, it might even be looking at the milkshake or looking at the food before you've even touched it, that insulin has already started to rise. So fasting gives your body a rest, and there's no insulin required when we're fasting. So it really allows your body time for that insulin level to come down, which is what we're wanting. And it's a metabolic rest. As I said, it's not a calorie deficit strategy. So we're giving our bodies time to repair and nourish, that we're not digesting all the time. And that our hormones can stabilize. Fasting is not skipping meals all day and then binging at night when we get home. It's not ignoring hunger signals. It's not white knuckling through fatigue, dizziness, or irritability. And it's not a way to make up for overeating. But we can use it as a tool. That's why I like to do our fasting on a Monday, because if you have maybe overindulged in a few things over the weekend or eaten things that you didn't, it's a nice way just to reset your body for the week. The most important thing to understand is that fasting works best when your food quality is good. So if we're eating real food, adequate protein, and lots of healthy fats, fasting tends to feel easier and not harder. The other thing with fasting is that we want to be in a good metabolic state. So generally we don't suggest fasting straight off the bat, but if you've been doing low carb for a while and you are in ketosis some of the time, then your hormones are ready to sustain you during the fasting periods. But when you are reliant on frequent loading of carbohydrates to give you that glucose and energy supply for your cells, and you suddenly just stop eating, your body is going to be calling out very strongly for you to eat again. And so it just makes it a lot more difficult to do that way. So most people think that fasting is about weight loss. And we know that weight loss can be a side effect, but it's not necessarily the main benefit of fasting. So from a metabolic point of view, fasting helps to lower insulin levels. It improves insulin sensitivity. It gives the body access to stored fat. So when our insulin level is low, we are then able to access the stored fat, which is locked away when our insulin is high. It reduces constant grazing and snacking, and it can improve hunger signaling over time. So it also just gives your brain and your body a chance to reconnect and for you to really find out what is real hunger, what is just emotional hunger or boredom eating or just habitual eating. And it helps you to become a bit more aware of your body signals and hunger specifically. Fasting also helps to get us into a higher level of ketosis. Obviously, longer fasts can really boost ketone levels, and sometimes that might be the goal that we're trying to achieve. So if we're wanting to get higher ketone levels, or if we're aiming for specific ketone levels for therapeutic reasons, and we're not getting it through diet alone, fasting can be a way of getting those ketone levels up. Because if we prolong the period of time where we're not accessing other forms of fuel, whether we're eating it, the fat or the glucose, our bodies then have to resort to the stored fuel, which is the ketone bodies through our fat tissues. People might also notice less obsession with food while fasting, more mental clarity, stable energy, and less emotional eating. But this is important that these benefits only happen when fasting is done gently and consistently and not aggressively. So who should not fast? Fasting is not appropriate or needs medical supervision if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. Obviously, in those cases, we are naturally more insulin resistant and we need more energy to provide for the growing fetus or for producing the breast milk. It is often not advisable if you have a history of eating disorders, especially with anorexia, where you wouldn't eat. So that is not advisable for someone with an eating disorder. We want them to maintain their 3 meals a day without the snacking in between would be more ideal for them. If you're underweight, if you have uncontrolled diabetes, if you're on any insulin or certain blood sugar lowering medications, or if you feel anxious or panicky around not eating. If that's you, then fasting is not off the table forever, but just not right now. Health always comes before we start adding in these extra tools. So before we go into full fasting, a nice way to break into it is through intermittent fasting. And it's exactly what it is. It means that we just for intermittent periods are going to choose to fast or not eat for that time. So it also means that we eat within a specific window and then we have a time or window that we don't eat. So most people automatically have an intermittent fasting. And if we look at how we evolved as humans, there have been times in history where we just haven't had access to food. Maybe we didn't catch or hunt, have a successful hunt on a day, and we came back empty-handed. And on that day, we didn't have food and we had to intermittent fast until we were able to eat again. That's usually what the breakfast meal is about. It's breaking the fast of overnight. But what we see nowadays is most people are grazing or eating till much later on at night, and then they eat as soon as they get up. So that period is very small and it's not long enough to get the benefits of fasting. So an easy beginner-friendly intermittent fasting schedule could be eating within a 12-hour window. For example, setting an alarm or a timer for 7 in the morning until 7 o'clock at night. And if you've never fasted before, this is a good place to start. So you just make sure that you've eaten all of your food and all your calories between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And you make a conscious effort then to stop eating anything after 7 p.m. You obviously can have your coffee and tea and water after 7, but no food, no calories going into your mouth. So many people are already doing this without realizing it. And if you've never fasted before, that could be a good place to start. A more extended version of that would be the 14-10 14 hours of fasting, 10 hours of eating. And Dawn, it sounds like this might be where you are now. And that would
Mm.
be from 8 in the morning, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yes.
This is where
Yeah.
people might start to feel that they are needing fewer snacks and curbing the late night eating and having an earlier dinner,
Mm.
which sometimes
Mm.
helps. Okay.
Mm.
That's also a
Yes,
good place to
definitely.
start. What we do
Mm-hmm.
find though, so you are in ketosis anyway because you are eating a very, I don't want to say strict, but quite a low carb diet, or probably close to
Mm.
zero most days. So you will naturally be in ketosis already. So in people that are still have a lot of glucose to burn or stored glycogen in their bodies, 14 hours might not be enough to use up the stored glycogen. So it's just important to remember that the body always uses up the stored glycogen first, and then it will go into your fat stores. If you have a lot of stored glycogen, you're going to have to fast for longer than 14 hours to actually get through the stored sugar first before you start making ketones. But if you're getting into fasting, so you might want to start with the 12-12 and then push it up to 14 hours of fasting and is closing down your eating window to 10 hours. So that's where you are, and that can work.
Mm. Yes.
From there, and maybe you can start to do this depending on how you feel, is moving into the 16-8. So 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating. So this might be delaying your breakfast till 10 o'clock and then keeping your evening meal at 6, or finishing by 6, or starting your breakfast
Mm.
around midday and then finishing at 8. So this is not
Mm.
necessarily a beginner starting point for everyone, and it should be doable but not stressful. And what we do know with
Mm.
fasting is that it gets easier with time. So the first time you do it, you might think, how on earth are you going to go for this long without any food? But it's really a mindset thing. So I'll give you some tips later on how to get longer. But in your case, Dawn, I think that would be, it doesn't have to be a sudden shift in your times, but you could gradually extend your fasting time and reduce that eating window.
Mm. Yes. Can I just ask a question? When you say
Yeah. Hmm.
coffee and tea is what do you mean? Is that without any MCT oil or butter or anything? It must just be water and maybe a bit of salt and the tea or the coffee.
Yeah.
Is that considered
Yeah.
fasting?
So depending on where you are, so you get a 16-8 and then you get the advanced 16-8. Some people might
Mm.
start the 16-8 intermittent fasting, but they would still have a bulletproof coffee or fat or butter or MCT oil in their coffee to help them get through that first
Mm.
breakfast section where you might not be
Mm.
eating.
Mm.
That's
Mm.
fine, but you would then want to progress with that and then remove all calories. So that coffee still has got some calories in it. So if you're wanting to really
Mm.
boost your weight loss, then you would want to remove those extra calories and do no
Mm.
fats added into the
Okay.
drinks. But it can
Yeah.
help you initially to get through that extra time period.
Okay. Thank you.
So I sometimes still do that because in my case, I'm not necessarily looking to lose weight. So if I am doing a longer fast, I would still be okay with adding butter to my coffee just to make it easier for me. Um, and I do have milk in my coffee. That doesn't seem to make a difference to my ketones or the fasting, but some people prefer to be like have no milk because they see the milk as also having calories. But that's a personal
Mm.
preference. And I think in
Mm.
your case, Dawn, if you are maybe looking to maybe lose a kilo or two, you could try and do it without the added
Mm.
fat and see if
Yes.
that doesn't make a
Yes.
difference, even if it's just
Yeah.
once or twice a week.
Okay. Yeah. And the thing is that cream is, if I
Mm.
do have is cream better than milk?
Well, it contains more fat and
Mm.
less carbs, but if you're going to be using it during fasting then
Mm.
it still contains calories.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
could look at
Okay.
removing that.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
yeah, no
Thanks.
problem. What we don't recommend initially is going full out into a 24-hour fast or a multi-day fast or fasting combined with excessive training, or fasting while under eating protein. So all of those things are definitely doable, but we need to do them in stages. So we're not going to start off with a 24-hour fast. So even though on a Monday, and I say we're doing our Monday fast and it's a 24-hour fast, not everyone goes until the evening meal. So some people will just delay their breakfast and eat it around 1 or 2, or maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon. It doesn't have to necessarily be a full 24-hour fast if you want to join us on that day. Okay, so then how do we start? So if you're curious about trying fasting, here's how to start safely. So first of all, we want to make sure that your food and your nutrition that you're getting in is adequate. So by prioritizing protein, including lots of healthy fats, and removing all that ultra-processed foods and sugar. So a lot of the time, people who struggle with fasting, it's because when they've eaten a high-carb diet and they've got a lot of insulin, it's when that insulin comes in, it brings their sugar down too low and they get low blood sugar. And then they feel terrible. They get all those horrible symptoms, the dizziness, be feeling cranky and hangry. And so for them, fasting is very difficult. It's almost impossible to stick to it. So we first want to make sure you've had at least 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks of becoming more fat adapted and lowering your carbs, eating more protein and healthy fats. Then you might want to start with delaying your breakfast slightly. So if you're always used to eat at 7, maybe move it to 7:30 or at 8. Or you could also try stopping eating earlier in the night. Okay, so either way, you're closing down on that eating window. We do have to make sure that we're staying hydrated, especially when we're fasting. So water, black tea or coffee is fine, and your electrolytes. I like that supplement that you take and you make it yourself. That's 100% fine. So just make sure that you're having enough of those electrolytes
Yes.
while fasting. Okay, because we are still going to be losing fluids. And then the step 4 is listening to your body. So, and I think just acknowledging, am I feeling, is this real hunger? Your tummy might start to gurgle and, it's preparing for food because every day at a certain time is when you would normally eat. So your body responds to those time cues as well. But just notice them and ask yourself, is this real hunger? Is it just because it's time of day? Am I thirsty? Is it an emotional response? So just asking yourself those questions, becoming a bit more aware of what's going on in your body. If you do start to feel any dizziness, nausea, shakiness, that often means that your blood sugar has gone too low and then you do need to eat. So with fasting, it's not actually about doing anything, it's about not doing something. And as soon as you don't feel well, all you have to do is eat something. So it's not something that's it's not dangerous in a way because you have full control over what you're doing. It's not a willpower exercise. I think a lot of people, and maybe even some people on this group, push themselves to get to a certain time, even if they're really not feeling great. But just notice that it's not about willpower. It's about just going because it feels good and you can go for longer without food. But if you definitely feel like you need to eat or you're not feeling well, then have something to eat. Okay, and then we just want to look at how do we break a fast. And I think this is also important. So anything with calories technically breaks a fast, but we want to keep the metabolism that we've developed over the fast. So the reason why we're doing it is to bring our insulin level down. And we don't want to then spike it back up again with eating a hamburger and chips once we've ended the fast. So we want to still keep to eating protein and fats and being careful not to overeat because we've thought that we haven't eaten the whole day. So drinking water, black coffee or tea or electrolytes during the day, that doesn't break a fast. That's okay. Even bone broth it does have some calories in it. And if you wanted to do the more advanced fasting, it would just be a water fast. But bone broth can definitely be used as a tool. Also, the electrolytes if you're still building yourself up to getting there, fasting for longer periods. We don't want to break a fast using coffee creamers, sugar, or any sweeteners, snacks, or protein shakes. We want to start with
Mm.
eating protein after we've fasted, and then adding your healthy fats and avoid having any sugar or refined carbohydrates. That's going to defeat the whole point of doing the fast in the first place. So anything
Mm.
like eggs, meat or fish, some Greek yogurt with nuts maybe, or whole real food meals would be fine. And
Mm.
initially, as your body adjusts, so you might, and also I suppose depending on how long, you don't want to eat too much after the fast because your digestive system has calmed down and it's relaxed. And if you suddenly just throw a whole lot of food down your throat and suddenly your gut has to wake up, you can have a bit of digestive complaints initially, but with time, your body gets used to it and then you don't have that at all. So let's talk about some
Mhm.
common mistakes and just to help reassure you if you have any other questions. So fasting for too long or too soon, under eating protein. So with this, we really have to make sure that we are eating adequate protein so that our body goes into using our fat stores and not using up or using our protein as energy. So that usually happens in starvation. But when we eat, we have to make sure that we are eating enough calories. Using fasting to compensate for overeating is not a good idea. And also comparing yourself to others. So we're all on our own journey and we know what feels right for us and what we've eaten and where our hormones are. So don't compare yourself to others. Just do what you can do and what feels good and fine for you. So
Mm.
fasting is optional. Consistency beats intensity. And your body is not broken if fasting doesn't suit you. This is about how we support our bodies and not how we control it. So in closing, we don't need to fast to be healthy. Um, But fasting can support your lifestyle, energy, and relationship with food, especially if you are eating more of a low carb, high fat diet. It can really be used as a powerful tool to help you get your metabolism to the next level. And that's another reason why we use it is often we cut down on our carbs and we see big changes early on and then things start to plateau. So what happens there is that your body then gets used to producing a certain amount of insulin and then weight loss becomes more difficult. So we can use fasting as a tool to what I like to call stress your metabolism. Oh, Zoe.
Mm. Mm.
Zoe's
Mm.
just joined us. Zoe, you're welcome
Uh,
to join in. You can ask questions, but I'm going to just carry on with where I am. And I'm talking about why we use fasting as a metabolic tool to stress our metabolism. So, like with anything, our body responds well when we stress it to a certain extent. So, if we want to build muscle and get stronger, we have to go to the gym and work out using heavier weights. And that kind of stress on our muscles and on our metabolism causes those muscles to get stronger. Same with eating and sauna, going in the sauna, using cold plunges. Those are all different ways that we can stress our metabolism. So fasting is another tool that we can use to do that. And basically, it forces your cells and your mitochondria to get much more efficient at using ketones as an energy source. Um, and that's the way I see it. So if you do feel like you've hit a plateau or you're wanting to just jumpstart your metabolism again, maybe go a bit deeper into ketosis or get your health fixed. Some people need more than others. Then fasting is a good way to do that. Um,
mm.
yeah, so I think for now, what you can decide is if fasting is right for you. Start gently if you do decide to try. So when I normally bring the fasting group on or when we do our Monday fast, generally what the plan is there is that you eat your last meal on the Sunday evening, and then you fast for as long as you can on the Monday, and then you would just break it with your normal fast. And we're aiming for 24 hours. But as I said earlier, if that doesn't suit you, doesn't sit well, then just do your intermittent fasting for as long as you can. And ask for
Mm.
help if something doesn't feel right. And
Mm.
yeah, did you have any other questions on that? We can have a bit of a discussion on the
Yeah,
fasting. This is really just a basic fasting. So there are more other ways that I would take someone through a bit deeper. So we've done a sardine fast together. You can do a water fast, and then the extended fasts up to 7 days, 21 days, depending on how metabolically um, unhealthy or inactive your cells are. I actually, just as an aside, got an email today from Dr. Bars, and she was describing one of her patients that fasted for 21 days. And after the 21 days, his glucose kind of just got stable and his ketones only reached up to zero point 0.7. And he was extremely frustrated that he had not eaten anything for 21 days and didn't see a lot of results. And basically, what she said there is that his mitochondria were so impaired and so tired and overworked that they actually didn't have the capacity to even make ketones. So remember, we need healthy mitochondria to start making these ketones to give us the energy. So in his case, the prolonged fasting didn't actually help him at all because he hadn't improved his metabolic state and his mitochondria first. And so that's where we want to start first, is improving your mitochondria and your metabolic health, and then bringing in fasting as a tool that can definitely help to improve where you end up. So we're sorry you joined in late, but if you have any questions, I have recorded it and I will post it. So you're welcome to go back and have a look.
I was in another meeting, so I was rushing between things, but no, carry on. I'm not going to interfere. I'm just going to listen from here.
Okay. Did you have any specific questions on fasting? Sorry, Dawn's camera is not on, so we can't see her, but we can hear her.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit technophobic, so I haven't managed to get my camera on. Listen, I'm really quite interested in that thing that you've said, that mitochondria make ketones. That's really interesting. You know, I've never thought about that. So it also depends on the state of your mitochondria, whether you how efficiently you produce ketones. So I think that's quite an interesting thing. You know, when you speak to people, like my son, who's been trying to do a carnivore, although, you know, his glass of wine gets in the way from time to time. But he has very low ketones, so maybe he just needs more time for his mitochondria to recover and strengthen. So I'm glad to have picked that up. And I just want to tell you, I've never tried a 24-hour fast because I get very anxious. You know, I mean, there's almost like a panicky feeling. You know, I don't know where that comes from, you know, but it kind of puts me off plunging in. But what you've done now for me is to just say, look, this is a gradual process. Just keep plugging on at what you're doing. You know, if it's like 14-hour once a week or whatever it is, keep a record and just build on that, you know, rather than like saying, now I'm going to do a 24-hour fast. And, you know, I do get like a hunger pang, but then I start just getting a bit panicky, you know. So,
and that's perfectly normal, Dawn. And I think there's definitely, you know, thoughts there, and maybe at a time in your life you didn't have food, and so those kind of those old learned behaviors are there, or those underlying beliefs about things.
Yes.
So I think just tell yourself you have food in your fridge, you can eat whenever you want. You know, it's not like you're going to a deserted island and you have to survive for 24 hours with nothing. There are some tips and tricks that I can maybe also just tell you about. So obviously your Revive or your electrolytes are going to help you. And then another little tip is to carry around some salt, your sea salt or your Himalayan salt that you use, either in a little Tupperware, or if you're at home, you just put a few salt granules on your tongue when you have those hunger pangs. And you will find that they come and go like a wave. So they might get stronger, and then you have the salts or you get busy with something else and actually they go away. And then you can go for another hour or two without even feeling hungry anymore. And I mean, when you're at home, you've got things to eat. If it gets really bad, you just go and eat something.
Yes.
Try that.
Jane,
okay, so
sorry, no, carry on, Dawn.
no, I'm waiting for you to hear you.
So I just wanted to know, Jane, when you do start feeling hungry and feel like you want to give in, what are your coping mechanisms or actions that you take so that, we can try the same thing?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So first of all, it allows you to experience hunger and then just try and differentiate. So you want to process that emotion or the feeling that you get and ask yourself, is this real hunger? I explained to Dawn earlier. So often, if we eat at the same time every day, your body becomes habituated to the time of day. And so you'll notice that if it hits 12 o'clock, then your tummy starts rumbling and you're starting to get ready for food. So if you then don't eat, you're going to start feeling some hunger pains, or just that gurgling, and your tummy's going to start talking to you. So the salt trick works. Having a sip of something to drink, getting up and moving around. So you just want to almost distract yourself a little bit from it. And then just ask yourself, is this real hunger? Am I stressed? Like, is there something else going on that's making me want to eat? Obviously, it just helps you to get to know the difference between real hunger and emotional hunger. So
That's
anything, I mean, you like keeping yourself busy with arts and crafts, so you might start a project or continue with a project or just go outside and get some fresh air. So just give yourself a moment to pause and just consider, is this real hunger before you just dive straight into the fridge and see what there is to eat.
Okay, then I have another question. Sorry, I'm putting my
Mhm.
hand up like I'm in class. I've started noticing now, it's actually been the last couple of mornings, that when I get up around my 3, 4 o'clock pee that I need, that I'm starting to now feel that sort of hunger pangs. I wonder if that's perhaps maybe I'm not having enough protein in my dinner at night or something
Mhm.
like that. I don't know, because when I start feeling like that, then I feel like I need to eat. I don't at that time, but I try
Mm.
and get breakfast as soon as possible. And then I know for myself that if I don't eat, I know when we've been on holiday or we're hiking or we're going away or something, I get hangry. And I just
Yeah.
I just know when that blood sugar drops, and I'm like, okay, feed me, Seymour, because
Yeah.
otherwise we have a problem, and I get irritable, and I really don't want to add that kind of pressure, as you know, in my current situation. So
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
So it could still be that you are overproducing insulin. So remember, your pancreas makes insulin and it has gotten used to over the years how much is needed depending on what you've been eating for the last couple of years. And it takes time for your pancreas and those cells in your pancreas to reduce the amount of insulin that it sends out every time you eat. So and it could be even that that's what's waking you up when you're waking up at that time. You think it's to go to the toilet, but actually what could be happening is that your sugar level is dropping and that signals you to wake up. And that's when you're feeling that hunger pains. So definitely increasing fat and protein is a good idea. And in your case, it might be better than to not start with a longer fast. And for some people, it works better for them to eat breakfast early and then eat their last meal earlier in the day. So instead of delaying breakfast, you're actually making your dinner earlier. The reason for that is that your body
So I'm
naturally spikes glucose in the morning. So we have that dawn effect where our sugars go up in the morning to help us wake up and get ready for the day. And so so we want to work with that physiology and eat our food when the sugar would have been high anyway, and then stop it earlier in the day and give longer. But I think that your insulin is still playing a part there, Zoe. And before, when you were doing your hikes, you were still eating your high carb diet. And I mean, I had the same. I used to come home and get so hungry, and I'd eat toast and peanut butter and a cup of tea, and just to feel normal. Whereas now I don't have that at all. So it might just take a little bit more time to truly get fat adapted and for your insulin
okay.
level to
So
normalize.
what I have
Mm.
been just generally trying to do is, so we're trying to eat by 7 o'clock and we finish by 7:30 at night. And then, in the mornings, I'm also trying to eat at a regular time. So I'll get all my bits and pieces and bring my little tray of breakfast, which is kind of a funny thing in our household. But anyway, so I only really eating at 9, 9:30. Do you think I
Okay.
should stretch that a little further?
So 7 till 9, let me just work that out. So that's 12, that's a 14 hours. So you already kind of doing that 14-10 intermittent fasting. And that if that works for you, then keep going with that for now. And what you want to work on is just not snacking in between your meals. So maybe that's something that you should work on first, is you eat your breakfast and then you eat your dinner and there's not as much snacking in between.
Okay, yeah.
Mm.
Because after dinner it's the piece of chocolate or the something, and I'm talking about the dark chocolate and stuff that I know that we have talked about. So I'll
Yeah.
just have to keep away from that.
So what I do normally tell people is you can still have those treats, but then it has to be within the hour that you're eating, like within that eating
Yeah.
window. So maybe
Yeah.
you can start becoming a little bit more intentional with your eating window and say you're going to start eating at 9 or at 9:30 or 10, and you're going to stop eating at 7. But then all those, I don't even want you eating throughout that time, but your snacks included would have to be eaten in that eating window.
Mm. Mm.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I just come in with a question? I'm just not keen to have like a big cooked breakfast, but do you
Okay.
think it's important to do that? Because I'll have either a boiled egg and my bulletproof tea or coffee, or I will have some nuts, like some almond, not almonds. I stay away from almonds, mostly macadamia or Brazil or walnut, have that because my early morning tablets and I take with that. But, just to cook in the morning. But I'm just wondering, how important is it? Because often people say have a big breakfast, a medium kind of lunch, and hardly anything for supper. If no, besides
Yeah.
not in fasting, but just generally. So, what is your thought? What are your thoughts about a big breakfast or a modest breakfast?
I think in your case, Dawn, you eating your main meal at lunchtime because that's
Mm,
your bigger meal.
mm,
So what you're doing
yes.
is perfectly fine. There's no right or
Yeah.
wrong. I mean, I tend
Okay.
to have a
Okay.
big breakfast later on in the morning. So not as soon as I wake
Mm,
up, but I might come back and then eat. And I look at my calendar for the day and I say, am I going to have time for lunch? If I don't have time for lunch, I make sure I eat enough at breakfast time that it's going to last me till,
mm,
when I get home. So I
mm,
typically only eat twice,
mm,
2 meals a day.
Yeah, me
But
mm,
too.
I do have a big breakfast. I
mm,
make sure that I eat a big breakfast, and we tend to do a cooked breakfast, but that fills me up and keeps me
mm.
going for the day. Then I don't have to worry about lunch. So in your case, lunch is
Yeah.
your main meal.
Yeah.
And so if you're
Yeah.
just eating your egg and a bit of yogurt and nuts and your coffee in the morning,
Mm,
I think when we first
mm,
spoke, especially with about your weights, wanting to lose a
mm,
little bit of weight,
mm.
I definitely think that you wanting to cut down a little bit on the fat that you're eating, your additional fat, the
Okay.
fat that's not in the
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
So maybe
Yeah.
with the
Like a lot of
fasting, you
extra butter and stuff to just tone that down a bit.
yeah. So what's
Mm,
happening?
mm,
So fat is what we use as a dial. We need to get a specific amount of protein, and fat we can turn up or down depending on the needs that we have. So if you're wanting
mm,
to
mm,
lose fat, then we don't want to eat as
mm.
much because then we want our body to use our own stored fat and not the fat that we're eating. So all the ketones that your body is making is coming from the fat that you eat, most probably.
Mm,
Okay,
mm, mm.
maybe that's what I'm doing is I'm having too much fat. So I'm loading things with butter and cheese and all of those kind of things. Uh maybe I
So
should
Yeah, so initially, I mean, Zoe, how long we've been doing this since November, right? So you kind of
Yeah.
it's been 3 months. Initially, we want you to eat the fat because that signals to your body that it has to start burning fat and that there's a different fuel source available. But then if you notice that you're not losing weight, we can look at reducing that so long as you're eating enough protein. But in the beginning, to become fat adapted, to restore all your fat-based hormones, you have to eat fat for that initial process. So yeah,
Okay.
Zoe, I think it can be something that we can look at and maybe just calculate exactly how much you are having and
Sure.
I mean, I
If
do
I
eat
may,
a lot of fat, but I'm not looking to burn my own body fat. So I have to eat the fat that I want to burn and use for ketones. But if you're somebody that needs to lose a lot of body fat, you don't want to be using up the fat that you eat. You actually want your body to, and that's where you might want to increase protein and then keep your carbs low and lower the fats, even if it's just for a couple of days a week. And that really gets your body into fat burning mode.
okay, I'll do that. And then hands up, sorry.
Yes.
Dawn, maybe, I don't know, just it's a suggestion for breakfast if you don't like cooking, because I'm not a big fan of cooking unless, we're doing a whole family cook up breakfast. What I've really found useful is I've bought a Banting bread mix and I make that at the weekend. I make a big loaf and I slice it up and freeze it. And then in the morning, I have 2 slices of that with butter and then avo. So that's my breakfast with my coffee and whatever else it is I put in my coffee. And I've started a Banting type of porridge, which I've been adding nuts and macadamia nut peanut butter and stuff like, or macadamia nut butter, not peanut butter to it. And I kind of have a double breakfast. So I'll have the one and have my coffee, and then maybe an hour later I'll finish the other one. I kind of eat my breakfast through the morning.
Yeah.
Maybe that I shouldn't be doing that either, Jane. Maybe I should be eating it all in one go, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we can definitely look at that. I know that Dawn is more on the carnivore plan, so she doesn't really eat a lot of those kind of flours and breads and things. But I think, Dawn, what you're doing is working for you, so just stick with that. And also at this
Yes.
time of your life, you're not overly active, so I don't think, so what you're eating is fine for your activity level and your age. Zoe, I think we definitely can look at bringing that the breakfast eating into maybe one meal and trying to see how we can reduce some of the added fat that you getting there. But I think for now, what you're doing is also working for you. Yeah. So that's great. Thanks for your advice on the bread. I
I
actually
suppose I
found
was
that I've
trying
got
to
some of
eat.
that. I want to make
I
some
suppose
bread
I
as
was
well. I've got that
trying to
Heba.
eat a big breakfast to try and then not
Eat
end up
later in the
then having
day.
lunch and snacking all afternoon, because that's where my problems started coming in for me, is that breakfast would wear off too early and then I'd just start
Yeah.
eating correctly for the rest of the day until dinner.
Okay. And what you could also
Yeah.
try and do is adding more protein to your breakfast, because it sounds like you're getting the fat and then the low carb, but I'm not sure if there's enough protein in the breads and the porridge. I know with the nuts, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
more.
I'm trying to add cheese to my so I'll put cheese and avo on my Banting bread, which I've added into my Banting bread extra nuts as well. And
Okay.
some mornings I do scramble an egg quickly with extra cheese in it, and put it on my Banting bread, and I'll do sort of 2 or 3 eggs
And
to
are you
have a
finding that that fills you up? So that helps you to
yes.
keep full without thinking of snacking during the day if you've had that.
Yeah, either all that I'm doing keeps me going. And I can carry on going till dinner time at night and not snack. So it is working. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Mm.
Anything else from you, Dawn?
Well, there's a big topic I'm on hormone replacement, and I'm just wondering if that doesn't store belly fat, in terms of, but I mean, I'm so happy to be on hormone replacement, so I wouldn't like to change that. But, I've just got this little fat roll on my tummy, which, I developed in the last 6 months. So it could also just be, the hormone balance. And I think that's why going to this functional, what is it, functional medicine consultant or whatever, just to get all of that checked out. Maybe I'm getting too much, what is the hormone, the female hormone?
Estrogen.
Estrogen. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Maybe too much estrogen, for instance,
Okay.
So, but anyway, that's sort of a little bit
No, I think
besides what we've
in
been
your
talking
case, you can
about.
definitely go and just check
Yes.
it out and get him to look at
Go and
everything.
have a
With
check.
functional health
Yeah.
doctors, they generally do have a good holistic view of
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
that's going on. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
What does
okay.
a functional doctor do?
So
Well,
they
they
look
just,
at, Dawn can tell us.
well, in my view, they just look at your whole picture. They take all sorts of readings and spend a lot more time with you, sort of unpacking whatever's going on. As the doctor is like, 10, 15 minutes, and he has the tablet, and we'll do, I do an annual blood test, the whole spectrum because of the hormone replacement. But I think a functional doctor seems to look at more details, maybe your mitochondria come into that and all sorts of things. So
Yeah.
I'll let you know once I've seen her.
Okay. Yeah, please
And,
do give us some
Right.
feedback.
Send me, I'd love to know the details. I'm just interested, not only for myself, but for somebody else I know. Interested in knowing and researching. So please send me the details.
Okay. And Dawn's also in the Cape, so if I'm sure maybe it might
Okay,
work
great.
out for you. Okay, I've got to go. Thank you both for joining us today. And
Yes,
I
thanks
enjoyed the
so much.
discussion on fasting. And yeah, we'll see you on the group. And Zoe, I'll see you again next week. But
Yep.
thanks for coming on, Dawn. It was nice to chat to you again.
Yes, it was a very helpful session. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Jennifer. And
Okay,
nice
no
meeting you,
problem.
Zoe. No,
Thank
nice
you.
meeting
And
you,
you too.
Zoe.
Yeah, I got something out of my last couple of minutes. So thank you so much. Okay, then. Bye.
Right.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Right.
So hello and welcome everyone to